Hi, this is Shep Altshuler, publisher of Timesharing Today. Welcome to this broadcast of Timesharing Today Radio, featuring news and views of owners and industry professionals. Today we are being joined by Jerry Nisker from Orange, California. Jerry has owned multiple timeshares for over 30 years, and he will be discussing why timesharing has been an excellent way to vacation and what it takes to get the most benefit from the investment in owning timeshares. Hi, Jerry. Welcome to the broadcast.
Hello, Shep. Pleasure to be here.
Yeah, I know that you've been a timeshare enthusiast for quite a while. You've contributed articles to Timesharing Today, but give our listeners a little background about how long you've been in a timeshare owner.
Well, I bought my first timeshare about 30 years ago. That was at Winter Circle in Del Mar, California.
What was your initial motivation to buy? How did you discover timesharing, and what made you jump into a purchase that long ago?
Well, that was kind of an interesting story. I actually was on a business trip in San Francisco, and I was waiting for a plane, and I was reading through USA Today newspaper, and I finished just about everything there was to finish. So I just started reading the want ads, and I came across a ad for timeshares. And to be very honest with you, I had always just heard bad things about them, and I wasn't terribly interested in buying one, but I just cut out the article because I was just kind of curious. Really, it was an ad, not an article. And I put it in my wallet, and I got back to the office, and it must have been a week before I actually saw it. So what I did was I called the guy, and I said, I'm just curious. I said, to be very honest with you, I'm not even interested in buying a timeshare, but I'm curious as to where you have them. And he said, oh, well, he said, I've got lots of them up in the mountain areas. And I said, well, that wouldn't interest me because I'm only good for about 2 days up at the mountains. And he said, well, I've got some, down in San Diego. And I said to him, San Diego, I said, that's interesting. I said, you wouldn't have any near Del Mar, would you? And the reason I asked him that is because I'm a fan of horse racing. And he said, well, actually, I have a place that's directly across the street from Del Mar Racetrack. And I said, really? I said, what part of the year is that? He says, it's in August. Well, August is one of the racing months of Del Mar. So I said, no, tell me about this. So he kind of explained it to me, and I said, well, tell you what, I'm going to run down and take a look at it, and if I'm interested, I'll give you a call back. So that weekend, my wife and I drove down there, and sure enough, it was directly across the street from Del Mar Racetrack and about 5 minutes from the beach. And so that's how I wound up buying my first timeshare.
So that was a definite purchase on the resale market, right?
Yes, it was, and it was one that I wanted to use. At that particular moment when I bought it, I had no idea really about trading, and nor was I interested in trading. I bought it specifically to use it because it's a fixed week and a fixed time.
You've acquired additional timeshares, is that correct?
Yes, I own a total of 8 timeshare weeks in 5 different properties. I since have bought 2 extra weeks at Winter Circle. So I now have 3 weeks in August, back-to-back, Winter Circle. I have one at Maui Hill on the island of Maui. I have one at Paniolo Greens, which is on the Big Island of Hawaii. I have one at Top 10 Plantation, which is Williamsburg, Virginia. And then I have 2 in Texas. And the 2 in Texas I bought strictly because they were already in the points system, and I wanted to use those for points travel.
So with these 8 different properties that you have, how do you use them pretty much on a regular basis, and how many are you using for primarily exchange purposes?
Well, the 3 weeks that I own across the street from the racetrack at Del Mar, I use either 2 or 3 weeks each year. Occasionally, I will rent one of my weeks to a friend of mine in Texas, so those are always used. Those are never traded. My properties on Maui and the Big Island, those are every other year usage. So what I do is I'm able to back-to-back Ponticello Greens with Maui Hill, either together on Maui by doing a trade, or what I did this past year was I used Ponticello Greens and I also used Maui Hill. Then the Powhatan plantation, I bank that one and generally use that for a trade on Maui. So what I normally wind up doing is, on the average, every other year, I usually wind up with 3 weeks in Hawaii. Then the 2 that I own in Texas, those throw off about 91,000 points a year for me total. And then I use those just all over the place. I've been all over the country and in Europe. And so I never really have a problem going where I want to go. In fact, I was able this morning to trade for a timeshare on Kauai for next year.
So these are RCI points that you're using?
That's correct.
So you've had the combination of fixed week and you have a combination of points, and I guess that really has paid off for you over the years. So when you have this accumulation of vacation time, how do you normally vacation? Do you go with just your wife or family, friends?
Well, we have a number of friends that like to go with us in timeshares, and so occasionally my wife and I will just get a 1-bedroom and go someplace ourselves. But normally what we do is we trade for 2-bedroom units and take another couple with us, and it's just worked out great for us to do that.
No, it's part of the spirit of timeshare vacationing, from my perspective, is being able to travel with family and friends. So you've been able to accomplish that over the years. When you look at the economics of owning, and there's so much debate about the value and of owning a timeshare versus the cost benefits, what is your thoughts about the economics and the trends of owning a timeshare?
Well, for me, the economics have just been fantastic, because if you sit down and actually do the math, and here's an example. I own a 3-bedroom, 3-bath timeshare on Maui, and if I take a look at the cost, which is about $1,000 a year in maintenance fees, and then I do the math and take a look at what I would spend if I just had a simple hotel room, I'm far better off by having a timeshare where I have 3 bedrooms, 3 bathrooms. I can invite other couples. We have a huge, huge living room, kitchen. So sometimes we barbecue. We have lunches or dinners at the timeshare, which is something you can't do when you just get a hotel room. And as you know, getting hotel rooms in places like Hawaii easily would be $250 a night. So when you do the math, you come out far better even when you have to pay maintenance fees, and even when you have to pay both maintenance fees and trade fees. But they have to be used. And I think where a lot of people go wrong is they don't understand how to use their timeshares. And I hear that all the time from people.
That is a common problem, and a lot of it results from impulse buying, where people go in on a presentation. They really don't do the research beforehand, and they end up owning something, and sometimes they own multiple properties, but they never really understood how to go about utilizing what they've bought, especially when it comes to the points. There's a lot of confusion that results from that. So I guess you did your homework and did the proper analysis on that. Would you say that's correct?
Well, that is correct, and you have to do the homework, and you have to ask a lot of questions. And one of the things that I always did is when I was on the phone with RCI counselors, I always just quizzed them like crazy. I wanted to know their system, and if you understand their system, then you can do a lot better than if you don't and you just make a phone call or try and do something on the internet. Chad, let me give you a perfect example of that, in fact. About 3 years ago, I was at a beautiful timeshare and had a beautiful 1-bedroom, 1-bath in Fort Lauderdale. And I happened to meet a guy in the hallway, and we just got to talking, and he was complaining to me that he had a really crummy unit, and it was a lockout unit. And he actually showed it to me, and I wouldn't have wanted to stay there. And I asked him, I said, now when you got here and you got checked in, did you happen to ask at the front desk whether or not they could upgrade you to a better room? And he said, yeah, I did, but they didn't have anything available. And I said, well, have you called RCI to see if they have anything available? And he kind of looked at me funny, and he said, well, why would I call RCI if they don't have anything at the front desk? And I said, because they have two different inventories. And so as I explained the difference in the inventories, he said, okay, I'm going to call them. Well, within 45 minutes of that phone call, he was upgraded to a beautiful one-bedroom, one-bath. And it was kind of funny because he asked me afterward, he said, would you have an hour or two to spend with my wife and I tomorrow morning and tell me more about these timeshares? Which, of course, I did.
So he was the beneficiary of your experience. So that paid off for him. And that's all part of what we feel the educational process that we try to put out through Timesharing Today. And you've written for Timesharing Today and have expressed your thoughts. So people just have to take the time and spend time with the counselors or with whatever exchange company they're going through. Now, has all your experience in exchanging been with RCI, or have you used any of the alternate exchange companies?
No, I generally have used RCI, but to be honest with you, I use Trading Places Maui for anything that I want to do in the Hawaiian Islands. They do a great job. They're easy to deal with, and I just really enjoy using them.
Now, have you sold any of the properties, or have you held on to everything?
I sold one. It's probably 20 years ago, though. I felt like I had too many in Texas that I just wasn't going to use, so I just sold one of my Texas properties to a partner of mine.
Okay, so you've had the experience of buying a number of them. You've actually rented timeshares, and you ended up selling a timeshare. So, as you said before, the value proposition of owning is still there, and that's what you can plan to continue to do for the future. Am I right with that, or do you have any plans to sell anything in the years ahead? What's your outlook on that?
Well, as far as I'm concerned, I've done very, very well with what we have. One of the timeshares that I have, the one in Williamsburg, Virginia, which is Powhatan Plantation, there's a possibility I may sell that at some point, and the only reason is because I have a partner in that one, and he is no longer traveling anymore, and he would like to sell it. So sometime probably in the next couple of years, we may go ahead and sell that one.
Now, have you been active on any timeshare boards? Are you participating in the governance of these resorts in any capacity?
No, I'm not.
Okay.
I just wind up, it turns out, giving a lot of advice to people, word of mouth. I actually get calls from people that I don't even know that say, I heard about you through someone else, and I need some advice on either buying a timeshare or using a timeshare.
So you feel that you have the value in terms of your purchase. You feel the economics work out. So as long as the properties are being maintained and they meet your expectations when you arrive, and you haven't been hit with any special assessments, or have you been affected by any special assessments that took you off guard?
Yes, we did have a special assessment at Maui Hill. What they did was about 5 years ago, they began to completely refurbish all of the units, including new tile and carpet, and redoing the bathrooms. And so we had a special assessment for about 3 years. I don't recall the amount, but it was very manageable, and they just did a great job in the refurbishment of the units, and we're very happy with them.
And you feel that the communications from the various resorts, including Maui Hill, have met your expectations. So you go on what is the purpose of time sharing is supposed to be carefree vacations, and I guess that's really what you've ended up experiencing.
Well, it certainly is for my wife and I. And another thing that I didn't even mention is that when we travel, my wife and I have different schedules. I like to go to bed early and read books, and she likes to stay up very late and watch television, and that does not work well in a hotel room. And
obviously,
the great thing about timeshares is I can go off into bed, close the door as early as I want, and read, and she can come in as late as she wants. And so timesharing just works out great for us. We generally go out for one meal and stay in for one, so we save money just on not having to go out for breakfast, lunch, and dinner all the time.
You said at the very beginning when we started this conversation that you were aware of all the negative aspects of timeshare that was portrayed in, I guess, the news media, and that goes back about 30 years ago. So the negative perspective or perception of timeshare is not anything new to the timeshare industry. And how do you feel about the future of the concept of vacation ownership in view of all this intense negative press that's out there that we continually write about in Timesharing Today?
This is a really interesting subject, and I think one of the difficulties for timesharing has been the increase in fees, which is very understandable because I think they've gone up far greater than a lot of other things. The other difficulty is that when the economy got really bad, people who were getting up in years couldn't even sell these things. So it's been an awful lot of negative publicity, plus the fact that people have been stuck paying maintenance fees for timeshares that they can't use. I think one of the things that the timeshare industry, and you guys have written a lot about it, has got to do is come up with a better way to allow people to sell their timeshares. And one of the things I would really encourage is every one of the resorts have that when people need to sell, that they could offer those to particularly the current owners, and then even people that are coming in for the first time. But I think the industry needs to do a better job of having a way for people to sell their timeshares.
Yeah, having a viable exit strategy for aging owners who can't afford the timeshares or aren't able to travel is really a critical problem. And the industry is moving gradually in that direction. There's an increasing number of resorts that are willing to take back deeded properties. They may have a fee that they impose in order to do that, but does provide an exit strategy for a lot of these owners, and that is gradually gaining momentum in the industry. So, but your outlook from your own perspective is the concept is good and you're getting the satisfaction that you bargained for, so you can't ask for anything more than that. And hopefully that when it comes time to sell, even if you have to sell at a reduced price, at least you've gotten the value out of the ownership experience that you've had. Would you agree?
Oh, I completely agree. I've absolutely been able to use mine. I rarely ever have a problem in trading, but then again, it's because I know how the system works. I know that I need to do this far in advance. For example, today when I went and called RCI about the properties that I want in Hawaii, it was exactly 10 months to the day in advance of when I want to go. And so I had no problem whatsoever in getting what I wanted.
With that in mind, and you've already given us some of your insights into what you might recommend, but what would be a few of the best pieces of advice for owners or prospective owners that you could give for those who might be listening to this broadcast?
Well, I think the first thing to do is plan in advance. And a lot of people that I hear say, oh, I can never get anything that I want. And then when I ask them, when do you try? It's usually about 60 days prior to when I want to go. Well, that just really isn't going to cut it in most cases. So the first thing you need to do is plan as far out as you possibly can. And then even if they say that they don't have something available, you need to continually check back, sometimes even on a daily basis, until you get what you want. Perfect example of that is that there's a place in New York, the Manhattan Club, which people are complaining all the time they can't get. Well, I got it, but what I did was I started 10 months in advance to the day, and it wasn't available on that day. I continued to check every single morning, and on the 8th day, I got exactly what I wanted. So it's continually checking, calling, going online, and understanding that you need to do it as far in advance as you can. Also, if you can be flexible with some dates, that's very helpful. And another thing is that if you can even be flexible on the amount of bedrooms that you need, instead of a 2-bedroom, if you're not traveling with other people, a 1-bedroom or even a really nice studio might do the trick for you. There's a place in Central California, I think it's called the San Luis Bay Club, that has beautiful single units. They're not full 1-bedrooms, but they're studios, and they are just some of the nicest ones I've ever seen in my life. And so my wife and I will try and get a 1-bedroom there, but we would be very happy with a studio there.
Yeah, have you gone to any destinations that weren't necessarily on your call list or hit list? I say that a common complaint that we hear at Timesharing Today from owners or exchangers is that I can't get what I want. And we've been stressing that there are many wonderful destinations that provide very good experiences for family vacations that may not be on the radar, but maybe broaden your options and try some new areas that you may not have thought about, and particularly if they're available, and you may end up with a pleasant surprise. Have you had any experiences along those lines?
I've actually had quite a few of those. One that comes to mind immediately is, and I had never heard of this place before, it's called Pagosa Springs, Colorado. And we went there simply because it was available, and it turns out it's exactly 60 miles from Durango. It's in a beautiful area, and we've actually been there 2 or 3 times now. And I would continue to go back. We also had the same situation when we traded for England. There was a couple places that we had not even heard of that were not on my radar, but we wound up getting them. Turned out to be a couple of great vacations. So, when you go into an area and say, well, I want to go to Colorado, you may never have heard of Pagosa Springs, or you're thinking Denver, but you've never heard of Dillon, which has some beautiful timeshares. They're just all over the place. So if you can just expand those horizons a little bit, and when the map comes up and it shows where Dillon is, look at the map and see where that is in comparison to other places that you want to go.
And that opens up a whole new world of vacationing when you do that, and it takes out the frustration, and just the idea of discovering something new can be extremely rewarding.
Well, I completely agree, and I have really enjoyed doing it, and we still, to this day, keep looking at places that we've never heard of before, and then I do some checking around to see what's in the area, and I think, well, let's go take a look at this. And we've just had some great vacations doing it.
Well, I appreciate you joining us today, and I want to express our thanks for the contributions that you've made to Timesharing Today, and we look forward to continuing the relationship.
My pleasure, and thanks again for calling.
And this concludes this broadcast of Timesharing Today Radio. Whether you're an owner or an industry professional, your opinions, suggestions, and experiences are all very important to us. So if you'd like to participate in a future broadcast, or if you'd like to suggest a topic for Timesharing Today Radio, please send an email to staff@tstoday.com. Until next time, have a happy New Year.